All right, and then Paula, you can go ahead and get started.
Okay. Well, thanks for inviting me to host this webinar. My name is Paola Bacigalupo Sanguesa. I am a veterinarian from Chile. Then I went to Colorado State for my master's, where I was more into epidemiology, not more into, my focus was epidemiology, looking at health events from one lactation to another and like to see if there was any association there. And then I moved to Michigan to work as a extension educator. And while here in Michigan, I met my mentor, Dr. Ron Erskine, and that led to eventually starting a PhD with a different focus. I'm now, all my research is around the parlor and milking efficiency. So a little swift into my research area. And with that, I'm gonna go ahead and start. Give me a few seconds to share my screen. Okay, can you see the slides now? Good. Okay, I'm gonna minimize my window. So the topic of today's webinar is the importance of milking efficiency. Okay, so parlor efficiency, I think we're all very familiar with this concept. It has been pushed by our industry, or maybe like we've been using it for so many years that we're so used to it. Metrics such as cows per hour, turns per hour, cows per milker per hour, and so on. So are metrics that we're very familiar. And if we ask any dairy producers what these metrics are in their farm, they probably know them, those numbers really quick. And I get it. I know why parlor efficiency is so important, because it's the standard on return of investment, right? Is one of the most expensive components on farms, and producers need to make the most out of it. But oops. Sorry. But parlor efficiency has to be in balance with milking efficiency, which I'm going to explain later. And it's not the same. They're different efficiency that needs to coexist together in order to be efficient overall and allow producers to get the most of both efficiency while and ensuring that the cows have good well-being. So what is milking efficiency? Very technical definition is the percentage of unit on time where milk flow is near maximum. So when we connect the milking unit and we see that very high milk flow, that's milking efficiency kind of, but it's the percentage of time where we see that high milk flow. So I am very visual, so I like to demonstrate this with a little illustration here. This block, dark green block, represents a unit on time of 5 minutes, okay? Out of those 5 minutes, we see for this event a high flow of milk for 4 minutes and 45 seconds. So this milking efficiency, it's equal to 95%. Just a note here is that milking efficiency is of 100%. It's not possible. That would imply that a cow is in full milk flow the entire time where the unit is attached. Maybe we can create this, detaching the unit on time before the cow has been properly milked, but in commercial farms that are doing a good job, 100% is not real. I'm going to explain more a little bit later. So now to have a little bit of benchmark ideas, where are we? So this graph represents, it's from a study that was done here in Michigan. And they look at the milking efficiency of 57 herds of different sizes. And in the horizontal axle, we have all the herds grouped in 4 columns, depending on their average milk efficiency or percentage of time in high milk flow. So the first column we have 61 to 70, then so and so until the last one is that milking efficiency higher than 90%. And on the vertical axle, we have the numbers of herds for each of the 4 groups. So let's say if I take a cow from, or a herd from this group, a cow from a herd that has 75% milking efficiency on average, an average cow from that herd would have high milk flow for 75% of the time where the unit is on or attached. The median for this sample of herds was around, and was 84%. So that's a pretty good number. It's very reachable. But the top 10 herds from the samples were in the 90s or higher milking efficiency. So it is achievable. Good milking efficiencies are achievable. And this is around 5 years old, this information. So maybe now this benchmarks are a little bit better. So just, I present these numbers just to get you start thinking, where are you in this graph? So what can affect milking efficiency? We have 2 events that impact milking efficiency, and those are overmilking and delayed milk ejection, which from now on I'm gonna refer to DME on the slides. And this is also improper milk letdown and bimodal flow, bimodal milk flow or bimodal flow or bimodal milking. All of those are the same. I think most of us are familiar with bimodal, but bimodal refers to like when we look at a milking curve, two peaks of milking, and we don't see that on every cow. So that's why I'm like shifting the language here to like milk ejection. So again, visuals for the explanation of what is what. The first one is the one that I already presented, a milking efficiency of 95% with a 5 minutes unit on time. Now the second one, it's a unit on time a little longer of 5 minutes and 45 seconds. There's a good milk flow for 4 minutes and 45 seconds, just like the cow above, but then the milk flow stops, but the unit's still attached for 44 more seconds, and that corresponds to a milking efficiency of 83%. And that is a representation of overmilking. Now the bottom block is, again, a unit on time of 5 minutes, but for some reason, it took this cow to around 60 seconds to let down the milk. So there was no or very low milk flow for the first 60 seconds. And then there was good milk flow. And this represents a milking efficiency of 75% and due to delayed milk ejection. So 2 different events, one happening at the beginning of the milking or at the end, can impact milking efficiency. Let's talk a little bit about overmilking first. So the definition of overmilking is the continuation of the milking process for 30 seconds after the milk flow stops. During that continuation of the milking process, since there's no milk or very, very low milk flow, the teats are being exposed to high vacuum. And that is always something that we always want to avoid. It is not good for the cow, and it brings no benefit to the farm. Overmilking affects the teat's health and the cow's well-being. It's we'll see a little bit more about the teats, but it's a very uncomfortable experience for the cow. And it also affects parlor efficiency, something that we're going to be discussing at the end of the presentation. The causes of overmilking are late milking unit removal, pretty simple. So, and this can happen due to human error or overwhelmed humans with too many tasks, and people cannot pay attention to when the cows are done to manually remove the unit, or can also be caused due to machine problems, or when the calibration of the units is not on top, or maybe not errors, maybe that the calibration is set to leave the cows too dry, and that leads to exposing them to long times of overmilking. The impacts of overmilking on teat health is the most often we see is hyperkeratosis of the teat ends, and this happens when cows are exposed to high vacuum at the end of the milking, not a single time. This is multiple times repeatedly. And we can see congestions when this happens one time. Now, moving on to our next topic. I have this video that shows two cows being milked in the same parlor. The units were attached at the same time. I believe that by now you notice the difference between the cows. Which cow do you think is milking more efficiently? Which cow do you think is using that parlor more efficiently? And which cow do you think is having a more comfortable experience while being milked? I hope you'll answer like that was the cow on the left of the screen. That cow was being more efficient and was having a better experience. So that was a classic example of delayed milk ejection, DME, or bimodal milking. So that technical words is the interruption of the milk flow between the cisternal and the alveolar milk. And I'll go back to this definition in a few more slides. The technical or more simple definition is where we see no milk flow for over 30 seconds or more after unit attachment, like we saw on the cow on the right. And the same as in overmilking, since there's no milk flow during this period of time, the teats are being exposed to high vacuum, and that's not good. That's a huge problem here. The causes of delayed milk ejection can be poor stimulation during udder prep, or tactile stimulation that we give to the cows during stripping or by using brushes. Another cause can be inadequate lag time. And also, or left often seen, is the epinephrine or adrenaline release and inadequate liner fit or pulsations. Delayed milk ejection affects the teats. We do see short-term changes like edema or congestion of the teats. It also affects the cow's well-being. If you've ever seen a cow experience this, it's very unpleasant, uncomfortable, and they'll show you with their behavior that is not something that they like. And also, more recently, we've been learning that there's an association with a decrease in milk production, and that is my area of research. Continuing in this topic of milk ejection, we know that it's oxytocin dependent. And now going back to the alveolar uncisternal milk that comes from the milk, the storage of milk in cattle. So an average cow, this is not considering all the stages of lactations, but an average cow will store around 80% of the milk they produce between milkings. That milk is going to be stored in the glandular tissue or the alveolar tissue. What you see here, that it's more closer to the spine of the cow. And around 20% of the milk is stored in the cistern. So that's like the pipes inside of the udder. So what does this mean? So if we get in front of a cow, in front of our milking unit, and we connect the milking unit, we have around 20% of that milk immediately available. The other 80% is contained in the alveoli. And a little bit more about the alveoli or alveolus. This here is an illustration of the alveolus. Alveolus are the microscopic units that together form the glandular tissue. So when you look at a mammary gland, when you look at an udder, there's millions of these microscopic units of this alveoli inside that udder. So the alveolus is responsible for milk production, milk synthesis, and also for most of the milk storage between milkings. And as you can see here, this is the alveoli, and that's the tissue that produces the milk. It is surrounded by blood vessels that bring the nutrition and the oxygen to the cells that will be producing the milk. And it's also surrounded by this myoepithelial cells that you see like as little spider webs that are very close together to the cells that are this layer of cells that is producing and storing the milk. Myoepithelial cells are muscles, very, very tiny muscle cells that, just like our biceps, they can contract. Okay. So when they contract, that's when the milk is released. So how is the path here is that when there's oxytocin around this muscle cells, sorry, and they contract, the oxytocin makes the cells, they cause the contraction of the cells, and that causes the milk release from the alveolus. Like this contraction is squeezing out the milk that is in the lumen of the alveoli, and then it goes from the alveoli to the ducts, and then to the cisterns, and then eventually we can remove that milk from the cow. But if we take a blood sample from a random cow, we're going to see that the oxytocin levels are very low, or there's simply no oxytocin, depending on what's going on with that cow. And that's because we need to do something in order to get that oxytocin in the bloodstream of the cow. And how do we do that? Is with tactile stimulation, something very simple. You can also buy oxytocin in a bottle, but we can get this oxytocin by tactile stimulation of the teats. And in this illustration is like the pathway of this reflex. So there's teat stimulation here in this illustration given by a calf that goes through the central nervous system, so through a nerve pathway from the skin of the mammary gland to the brain of the cow, where the oxytocin was stored, and it gets released once they get the signal from the central nervous system. And the oxytocin gets released into the blood, and it gets eventually to the mammary gland, where at the alveoli level will cause this contraction of the little muscle cells that are surrounding the alveoli, and that will squeeze out the milk. So very simple, or not that simple, but that's the summary how this happens. So one thing here is that this path that I show, I'll show it again. The yellow one, central nervous system, it's a nerve pathway, is very quick, tenths of a second. But the other path, the bloodstream that takes the oxytocin from the brain to the mammary gland, that one takes more time. And I want you to remember that, because something is coming related to that. And of course, on a commercial dairy farm, what we see is, or who is in charge of providing that tactile stimulus or stimulation is the milker, and then the milking units. We usually don't see calves giving this stimulation. So for oxytocin, we know that requires stimulation to be released, and also that it has a half-life of 2 to 3 minutes. That means that it doesn't last longer than that. 5 minutes, we're gonna find, after an oxytocin release, we're gonna find very little oxytocin on the bloodstream. So based on oxytocin, there's milk letdown requirements. First, based on literature, the stimulation time required is 10 to 15 seconds. That means that is why we also don't do just one simple strip of one teat. We need multiple stripping in order to get this response. This is based on literature. I think based on my observations, I think even with 8 seconds, we can get a pretty good milk letdown, because it's creating that a response that is good enough to provide a good letdown. And we also base on those the lag time. We need, sorry, for the lag time, based on oxytocin, which is the lag time is the time that goes from the end of the tactile stimulation until the unit attachment. We need at least 60 seconds. That was how long it takes from the oxytocin to get to the mammary gland, to the udder, from the brain. And we need less than 2 to 3 minutes, because if not, our concentrations of oxytocin are gonna decrease due to the half-life of the oxytocin. So if we respect these requirements, if we follow them, we comply these requirements, we're gonna have good letdown times. But if we don't do both, we will see problems with the letdown time. So now I told you that there was an impact of delayed milk ejection or bimodal milk flow on milk production, and that is my line of research. So this here shows a little bit of that impact. So this study looked at over 650 cows from a herd in Michigan during one single milking. All these cows were being milked 3 times a day. So they measure their milk letdown time, and cows were put into 3 different groups. Cows with normal milk flow, or milk letdown time when the letdown was before 30 seconds after unit attachment. And then with mild delayed milk ejection, if the letdown time was between 30 and 59 seconds after unit attachment. And lastly, severe delayed milk ejection, where the letdown was after 60 seconds after unit attachment. And when they compare the milk yield of these three different groups, they saw a significant difference between the three of them. So between normal and mild DME was around 3.5 pounds. And is it 3.5? Well, I can do math now. But between the normal group and the severe DME, it's around 7 pounds. So a message that my mentor, the one that the main person that did the study, is that a minute delayed, 7 pounds tossed away. This was considering days in milk. This was considering lactation. The difference was from the same, and cows from the same farm eating the same diet. The difference was having or not having delayed milk ejection. So now this opened the line of research for me. So that was during a single milking. So what part of my research, the first project, I looked into the milk letdown of over 4,000 cows in 4 different farms. They all milking 3 times a day. And I look at the cows for 10 consecutive days. Since they're milking 3 times a day, that means that I have milking records or observations for for 30 milkings for this 40,000 plus cows. So for each milking, I determine if the cows had delayed milk ejection or no. So based on that, I calculated the percentage of delayed milk ejection milkings per each cow, and I also put the cows in different groups, the one with lowest and the one with highest percentage of delayed milk ejection. So I'll show you a little bit more about that. So here we have all the different delayed milk ejection percentages and on the horizontal axle, and on the vertical axle is just the counts under each percentage. So here 4-0 are our best cows or champion cows, the ones that during those 30 consecutive milkings had a good milk letdown for every single milking. On the other extreme, we have cows for the 30 consecutive milkings that have a delayed milk ejection episodes during every milking. So in between that, we have all the percentages that possible percentages we could have from 30 milkings. And now what I look at, I group them in categories, trying to show different results that you'll see next. So I group them from 1 lower percentage and 4 highest percentage of delayed milk ejection or bimodal milkings over the 30 milkings. And when I compare, so I made the groups of cows, and when I compare the average milk productions for this 4 groups of cows, so average milk production for cows that had here on the left 0 to 25% of their milkings with their delayed milk ejection. When I compare them, and for all the cows that were in that group, their average cumulative yield over 10 days was 444 kilograms, versus cows that have the group of cows that had 75 to 100% of their milkings with delayed milk ejection. Their average production was significantly lower over the days period. How different comparing these two groups is 85 kilograms or close to 183 pounds. So this is not significant, like I'm showing you here. No statistics analysis done yet, but it's just very visual how the average for these four groups is different, right? So next, I did a simple regression. This is how to see if there's like a significant relationship between having high percentages or having to see if there's a significant relationship between the percentage of milkings with delayed milk ejection and cumulative milk production in pounds over those 10 days. And the answer is yes. This preliminary analysis is showing that there is a relationship. So it's something that we should be putting attention to, not just because it's uncomfortable for the cow. It can have short-term changes in the teeth. It can also have an impact on the profit of the farms. So how can you know if how can you know your milking efficiency or your cow's milking efficiency? First, there's a lot of technical services, veterinarians, or services in general that offer evaluations with lactocorders that measure the milk and ejection across an entire milking event. So here you what you get from this, you have a curve or a graph looking at milk let down and how old the event of milking is. VIDIA vacuum recorders, which use the vacuum to assess milk ejection, and I'm going to explain a little bit more of this because this is what I'm using for my research, and they're easier to use when it comes to technical services too. And this is now offered by some veterinary practices and also other technical services co-ops too. Some of them have them. Parlor milk flow meters, I'm not going to have time to discuss this now, but if you have parlor milk flow meters, not just yield meters, the milk flow meters, there's a way you can cut off, you can look at the window of time between 30 to 60 seconds and set up a cutoff and determine if like cows below that cutoff are considered delayed milk ejection. And the simplest way to do this that I encourage you to do is to do a visual and manual evaluation of this. What does this mean? You go to the parlor while the cows are being there, you observe their milking routine, and you measure times and you measure different cows. You can see how long it's taking the milk to come after unit attachment. For the mentors of this group, this is a great project for apprentices. So I encourage you to do this so you can have an idea of where what are you getting from your milking routine when it comes to milking efficiency. It's a little bit more time demanding than the other ones, but it's doable. So VIDIA vacuum recorders, what are they? So they're portable, very tiny units, like you see here and here. Another more updated unit that I do not have, but we attach different channels through silicone tubes to the mouthpiece chambers of a front and a rear quarter, and also to and the mouthpiece we check for vacuum at the base of at the teeth, and with the one that we attached to the short milk tube. You can see it right here. We get a proxy for the cluster vacuum. So based on that, we get this graph. And what do we have here? So on the horizontal axle, we have time. So this one is like a almost 6 minutes milking time. And on the vertical axle, we have the vacuum, inches of mercury. The green and the blue, the blue and the red are the lines that represent the vacuum at the mouthpiece chamber. And the green one here is the vacuum at the cluster. So what can I tell you from this? And I've looked at this point, maybe thousands of graphs. But this is a classic one from a normal milking. Why? Because here it's where we're attaching the unit. We see a drop in the vacuum at the mouthpiece, and we see noise here on this line. The drop in the vacuum at the mouthpiece level means that there's good milk flow. So if we have good milk flow, the vacuum is gonna go down. And that is what we have. We do not want to expose the teats to high vacuums. The cow has a good milking for most of the time. Then one part, probably the front one, is done first, and then the rear quarter is done milking. You can see that because the vacuum starts going up as the milk flow starts going down, and then the unit comes off. This is a normal milking. This is what we want to see. This is what the cow on the left of the screen had during her experience. Now, this one tells us a story a little bit different. So this one on the time scale at the bottom has around 6 minutes and 30 seconds. I have it in my notes. I can see very well. And here, same, we have the inches of mercury on the horizontal axle. But different from the first one, we see a dip in vacuum as soon as the unit is attached, but then the vacuum goes up. And then it goes down again. One quarter is done milking, and then the second quarter is done milking, and then the unit comes off. This is classical of bimodal milking or of delayed milk ejection. We get the little bit of the cisternal milk, that 20% or less that was immediately available after unit attachment, and then we run out of milk. The vacuum goes up due to low flow or no flow of milk. And then eventually there's an oxytocin response, and we get the alveolar milk for most of the milking, and it's good. Now this one, again, a different story, is a representation of overmilking. Good, let down at the beginning. One quarter is done milking first, but then the other one is milking, and the unit still's on for more than 30 seconds, and this is overmilking. Now, what do you think is happening to the teats when there's no milk flow and they're just being exposed to high vacuum? That is where when we see congestion, and when we see edema, when we see that the cow, it's telling us with some behavior, they tell us that their teats are very sensitive or they're in pain. Now, moving on.
Hey, Paula, I have a quick question.
Yes, yeah.
On the first one that showed the good milking,
yeah,
the red, especially the red, but the blue too, but the red has those kind of smooth waves. That's like 7 or 8 per minute. Is that per minute or is that per second?
Those are, so when you see, like if you zoom into these lines, you see a lot of noise.
Okay.
But that is nothing concerns me about this graph. You can see noise. So for example, if there's poor line fit between the teeth and the liner, this noise can be even more inches of like higher, very wide with a lot of inches of mercury of difference. That's not good for the cow, but you can also like have good flows with a lot of noise when it comes to the milking.
Okay. So are you saying some of that's cleaned up a little bit to make it kind of
In this case, it came up clean.
came up like
And
that?
it all depends from the liners they're using at the farm, how the anatomy of the teeth of the cows is, and if they're the state of the liners too. If they're changed, how they're supposed to be exchanged, and or if there's squawks, if there's poor alignment of the hoses of the milking unit, and there's squawks, there's air coming in, you see a lot of noise. But this one, it's clean. That those little fluctuations there do not concern me at all.
Okay. I guess it may have answered my original question, which was going to be, you've got smooth waves here, and then the other ones, there's a lot of, they're just not as smooth. And
yes,
it sounds like you're saying just all those different variations you mentioned.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have farms that like they look all clean like this, and then one unit looks with a lot of noise, and that's a unit that I will recommend to look at, because and sometimes they all look very noisy with good let down, but it might be because of the liners. So there's multiple factors that can affect this, but it's never going to be like a very clean line. We need some of this noise. That's normal from the milk flow.
Well, thank you.
Okay, now moving on to like the last portion of the presentation is now we have to talk about the impacts of poor milking efficiency. So due to the two different causes, we're going to see two different kinds of impacts. Both affect teeth health, both affect cow well-being, but when it comes to parlor efficiency, we see an impact only when it comes to overmilking. And when it comes to milk production, so far, we've only seen that associated to bimodal or delayed milk ejection, not due to overmilking. So let's think about the time breakdown per turns in a parlor. So what is happening? The cows are entering the line. There's the milker doing the udder preparation. Then there's the unit attachment, how long it takes us to connect the milking machines. Then the unit on time. Then we apply the post dip, and the cows walk out of the line either by fast exit or conventional exit. That's pretty normal, right? So when we are experiencing overmilking, the unit on time is the one that we're going to see affected, nothing else. And since this unit on time, let me show you this first. So the impact of overmilking on parlor efficiency, to demonstrate this, I have an example. This is fictional, okay? So we have farm A, that is a double 12 parallel, has a parlor efficiency currently of 5 turns per hour. They're milking on 7-hour shifts, and they can milk 120 cows per hour, and this corresponds to 140 cows per shift. So here on the bottom is how it looks now. It's 5 turns per hour. They're milking 840 cows per shift. The daily milk production that they're producing, let's say, is 75,400 pounds, and this is the revenue that they're doing. If by any reason this, not by any, let's say over milking is causing the parlor efficiency to go down from 5 to 4.5, this changes how many cows can be milked good without rush, just considering the 7-hour shift. I know that every time we can still milk this 840 cows, but something is gonna be sacrificed. This is just by increasing the unit on time and keeping the other factors constant, okay? So if we go to 5 turns per hour to 4.5, we can, since we're going to be milking less cows, this would have an impact on the monthly revenue of around $36,000. Pretty significant, right? And this is a fictional example. But now let me, and one more thing about, that was the impact on milk production, on how many cows you can milk and time. But we always need to remember the impact that this is going to have on the cows. One thing that is the easiest thing to do to see is the increased time spent in the holding pen, which we always want to reduce, but we cannot always achieve that. We don't want the cows to be standing there because of now, on a day like today. I'm here in Michigan, October 2nd, and it's going to be over 80 degrees. A month ago, it was even, we had even higher temperatures. So we never want the cows in the holding pen, even if we have them with heat stress abatement tools, sprinklers, and fans. It's not good, because where do we want the cows? We want the cows in their pen, laying down, eating, and drinking water. That's never going to happen while we're having the cows in the holding pen. So if we increase or if we decrease the parlor efficiency and due to over milking, that means that it's going to be taking us longer to milk the cows. We're gonna be increasing the time in the holding pen, and it is not a good thing. But now that was with a fictional example, and now I'm gonna share an anecdotal evidence. So this means it's a real case, but it hasn't been published. So this was a farm that has a AA parlor, and during a parlor evaluation, my mentor found that they had 3.5 turns per hour. This was extremely slow, and they had a high percentage of milkings with over milking. Around 80% of the milkings had over milking, and kind of like a good thing, they have a very low percentage of delayed milk ejection milkings. So not bimodal wasn't an issue. The issue here was over milking. So the changes that were recommended was to increase the stimulation time to reach 8 to 12 seconds, which they did implement. And also very easy to fix the takeoff settings. So that meant that the producer had to call the technical service, and eventually they did fix them to get them off the settings so the cows were not milked too dry. So the unit on time went from 7 minutes to 4.5 minutes, and the parlor efficiency went from 3.5 to 4.7 turns per hour. They decreased the delayed milk ejection percentage to almost 0. And thanks to this more efficient use of their parlor, they were able to increase herd size. So that was very significant for this operation. So instead of milking 56 cows per hour, they started to milk 75 cows per hour. So they increased their herd in over 100 cows. They did, in this particular case, they did have the space. They didn't have to build new barns, but it was something that they were just not paying attention for whatever reason, and it represented a big opportunity for this farm. So now, a little bit different, that was the impact of overmilking on parlor efficiency. And now I'm gonna give an example of when parlor efficiency is having an impact on milking efficiency, which is the thing that I'm seeing most in like larger herds. So farm B is a fake farm, made up farm, also with a double 12 parallel, and their parlor efficiency is 6.5 turns per hour. They're also milking 7-hour shift, and they're based on this, they're milking a little over 1,000 cows per shift. This cat farm though has a 70% of delayed milk ejection. No issues with overmilking, just a very, very high delayed milk ejection percentage. Oops, this wasn't supposed to be like this, but now, how can they get away with this high parlor efficiency, 6.5 turns per hour? So we have the same budget of time. We have the cows entering, the udder preparation, unit attachment, unit on time, post dip, and cows leaving the line. They cannot cheat. We cannot cheat, right, with the cow's speed of entering or exiting the line. Unit attachment, that takes, unless you hire a super slow or a super fast, above average, I think all the milkers do a very like average time attaching the units. Post dip doesn't take too much time. So where are they cheating is in udder preparation. So depending what they're skipping on in udder preparation, this can lead to milk quality and other health issues, and also to delayed milk ejection issue. What I see the most is that farms are skipping stripping, and skipping stripping, the elimination of the first 1 to 3 squirts of milk. That could lead to both of these issues. But for today, we're gonna be only focusing on delayed milk ejection. So the farm that I show you, based on very conservative numbers, so from the study from my mentor, I show you that the reduction in milk production in comparison was to cows that had normal milk ejection was between 3 to 7 pounds. So for this calculation, I use 5 pounds of milk loss per day. What my advisor found was based on a single milking. So we're being conservative, 5 pounds per day, based on a 70% of delayed milk ejection for 1,092 cows. The milk loss for this herd on a daily basis is close to 4,000 pounds. Now, if this farm implemented some changes, and if they lower that percentage of delayed milk ejection to 50%, the losses would be a lot less, over 1,000 pounds less a day. So what can that mean? 1,000 pounds a day could represent 10 very good cows, right? If they're milking 100 pounds a day, 1,000. So would the answer for this farm would be milk a little bit of less cows and keep the production and invest that time into a better udder preparation? Who knows? That might be a future study to see how we can improve these things. But again, from anecdotal evidence from one of my mentors, the answer is yes. He's a consultant and he's seen farms that have sold cows, different numbers of cows, and reduce her size and maintain milk production. So the message is that we need proper stimulation, either by hand or by a brush, but we need that. And the other message is that over milking increases unit on time, therefore decreases parlor flow and parlor efficiency, while bimodal or let down or delayed milk ejection does not decreases parlor flow. What they both do is that they impact the overall health of the cow, and they can have very costly implications for your operation. So now to close, just remember that overall efficiency is going to be a balance between milking parlor and parlor efficiency. Looking at those both coexisting and trying to find the right point for your parlor will get you to your production goals while maintaining cow well-being. With that, I'll take questions if there's any, and if not, here's my email if you need to contact me.
Hey, Paula, thanks for that. It was really good information. I did have a question on over milking.
Yeah.
Is your recommendation to, maybe, milk a cow out at, 97% and then leave a little bit of milk in there, maybe when there's just a little bit more coming out, so that, we can reduce the risk of over milking and then keep the machine moving onto other cows? Or what would you say on that? I guess the reason I'm asking is, sometimes you can see, in terms of identifying if the cow is done, you have the machines will give you a little bit of they'll give you an idea of the volume of milk coming out, but sometimes you'll see that the udder feels empty. There's maybe a little bit more milk coming out, but the machine says that maybe there's half a pound a minute. So that from the feeling, they're just about empty, and there's maybe a little bit more milk coming out. So you'll leave it until the machine says 0. I know you talked a little bit about adjusting the machine takeoff settings. What's your recommendation on that?
So the takeoff setting, the best test to find out what's your best takeoff setting is to do the cup test. And what is that? After whatever setting you're using, you go and you milk the 4/4. You need to get at least 1 cup between the 4/4.
At least 1 cup between the 4/4.
Yes.
So 1/4 giving one cup, or
no, you milk. I mean, it can happen that just with 1/4 you're gonna get 1 cup. So minimal, you can get like 1 cup is I'm sorry, but I think on cc's, I don't think in ounces, but if you can get like I don't know, like 50 cc's per quarter, that would be like 200 cc's, which is a cup. That would be fine. So get a measuring cup, milk for 1/4. If you get done with 1/4 and you have less than 1 cup, continue with the other ones. But that's the best test to know if your cows are leaving to I'm gonna stop sharing. That if they're leaving the parlor too dry or too wet. And what we know from like some robot studies that are being done, like there's no big implication on having the cows leaving too wet, unless they're like leaking. If they're leaking, that's a big indication that they're leaving too wet. But if they're leaving with a few pounds of milk, there's no implication on milk production and milk quality.
Even for like a 2 times a day operation?
Oh, okay. I will need to check that.
Okay, just curious. Not.
Yeah, no, I'm not gonna lie. I don't know for twice a day operation. So I can give that information back to you. But like
Overall, safest thing, like leave a little bit in there rather than
Yeah.
over milking. Okay,
yes, yeah,
cool. Thank you.
you're welcome.
All right, I'm just gonna post a quick poll here. It's like 2 questions. If folks could just take a second to fill that out. And then if you have any other questions for Paola, if not, we'll wrap it up.
And for the people are going to be watching the recording, just give me an email if you have any questions.
Yeah, thank you. I think we're finding that that's how a lot of folks end up.
Yeah.
The webinar info is to watch it later. So
Where's that going to be if I want to share it with someone?
it gets, are you, Casey, are you involved with DGA at all?
My mom forwarded me this email with the info for this, so maybe she'll get it.
Is she a mentor?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. It's housed on the DGA website. It's for mentors mainly.
Okay.
But I can put my email in the chat.
Yeah, doing the cup test is another good task for apprentices.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, I
You
like
have
that idea a
if
lot.
you're mentoring one at this time. It's a very good experience.
Great. Well, everybody, thank you again for being here, and thank you, Paola. That was really informative. And I'll go ahead and stop the recording.
Okay.